You ever wonder how the data from an app on your phone, or, a simple sale in a store, actually makes its way into a company's giant database? It kind of feels like magic, right? It just happens. But trust me, behind the scenes, it's often this huge, manual, repetitive chore for data engineers. Today, we're going to look at a system that was built to fix all of that.
All right, so here's the plan. First, we'll dive into the problem, what I'm calling the endless data chore. Then, we'll introduce a much smarter way to get things done and peek inside this automated system. After that, we'll figure out how to give it the right instructions, see how to put it to work, and wrap up by looking at what this all means for the future. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. To really get why this new system is so cool, we have to understand the old way of doing things. And yeah, it really was an endless chore.
Seriously, think about it. For the longest time, every time a company needed to move a new set of data, like a new list of customers or daily sales figures, a data engineer had to sit down and write a brand new piece of code from scratch, a whole custom-built pipeline, just for that one table.
So you'd build a solution for table A, and hey, it works, great. But then here comes table B, and you're right back at square one. You have to write all new code, build a whole new pipeline, test it, deploy it, and then guess what? Here comes table C and table D, and you get the picture. It's a never-ending cycle. It's incredibly slow, it's inefficient, and every single one of those custom pipelines is just another thing that can break.
So there has to be a better way, right? Well, there is. Let's meet the hero of our story, the dynamic data loader. The best way to think about this is to imagine you have a smart data robot. Now, instead of building a completely new machine for every single task, you have this one super powerful, really flexible robot. And if you want it to do something new, you don't rebuild it. You just add a new item to its to-do list. That's the big idea right there.
Now, this whole approach has a fancy technical name, config-driven ETL. ETL is just a shorthand for extract, transform, and load, which are the basic steps for moving any data. But the config-driven part is key. It means that instead of bearing all the instructions in complicated code, you put them in a simple configuration table. It's literally a to-do list for our robot, telling it exactly where to get the data, what to do with it, and where it needs to go.
So, how does this robot actually read its to-do list and get the job done? Come on, let's pop the hood and see how it works.
This really shows you the difference in a nutshell. Over on the left, you've got the old way, this tangled mess of different pipelines, one for every single table, and each one has its own logic hard-coded inside. If you want to add a new table, a developer has to start from scratch. But on the right, that's the smart way. You have one single universal pipeline that can handle any table. All the logic, all the instructions live in a simple config table. So adding a new data source, it's not a coding project anymore. It's just adding one single row to a list.
Okay, so it really boils down to three main parts. First, you've got the to-do list. These are just a couple of simple database tables that hold all the instructions. Second, there's the robot's brain. This is a single, powerful script that reads those instructions and does all the heavy lifting. And finally, you have the organizer. Think of this as a master process that just goes down the to-do list line by line and tells the brain which job to work on next. It's a really simple and honestly beautiful system.
You know, a smart robot needs smart instructions. This system isn't just a one-trick pony. It can handle data in a few different ways, depending on what you need. So the most basic instruction you can give is called a master load. This just tells the robot, hey, see that old table? Wipe it out completely and replace it with this brand new data. It's perfect for that foundational data that doesn't change a ton and isn't gigantic, like a master list of all your products or your store locations.
Next up is the transaction load. Now, this one is way more efficient, especially for those huge data sets that are growing all the time, like sales records. The instruction here is much smarter. It's don't reload everything, just check the last few days of data, get rid of any old records for that period, and then add the new stuff. This approach saves a massive amount of processing time.
And then there's the really clever one, transaction by parent. Okay, picture this. You have your customer orders in one table, and all the individual items for each order in another table. The order itself has the date, right? But the line items don't. This instruction tells the robot to be smart and look up the date from the main order to figure out which line items are new. It's a brilliant fix for a super common and often annoying data problem.
So how do you pick the right one? Well, this table breaks it all down pretty nicely. The master load is super simple, but it's an all-or-nothing deal.
Transaction and transaction by parent are way more efficient for those daily updates, but they do need a little more info to get set up. And for those really unique, tricky situations, there's even a custom query option that gives you total flexibility. The point is, you have options. You can always pick the perfect tool for the job.
Okay, so we get what it is, we see how it works under the hood, but how hard is it to actually use? How do you give our little robot a new job?
This is the best part. Putting this system to work is ridiculously simple, and you don't write a single line of code. First, you just make sure the system can connect to your data source. Easy enough. Second, you pick the best load type for your table. Master, transaction, whatever you need. And third, you just add one new row to that control table with all the details. And that's it. You're done. A task that used to be a multi-day coding project is now just a few minutes of configuration. It's a total game changer.
Look, this isn't just about some clever piece of engineering. It's bigger than that. It really points to a major shift in how we think about data and why automation is so incredibly important.
This quote from the system's own manual just says it all perfectly. The whole goal is to stop reinventing the wheel. It's about building one smart, reusable system that can handle tons of variations on the same basic task, freeing up human beings from that mind-numbing repetition.
And get this thing is built like a tank. The system gives any single data loading task a timeout of 12 hours. That is a massive window. It means this thing is designed to handle absolutely enormous amounts of data without breaking a sweat. It's not for small jobs. This is an industrial strength solution.
So, what does this all mean in the real world? Well, it saves a huge amount of time for very skilled, very expensive engineers. It slashes errors because automation is just more consistent than a human doing the same thing over and over. It means businesses can move faster, adding new data sources in minutes instead of weeks. But you know what the biggest impact is? It empowers people. It lets smart, creative problem solvers stop being data plumbers and start tackling the bigger, more interesting challenges that actually move a company forward.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. This system is just a fantastic example of automating a really complex but really repetitive task. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other tedious chores in our jobs are just sitting there waiting for their own smart robot to come along and solve them for good?
Our tour through this awesome system was made possible by the Dynamic Data Loader Manual from Unicorntechint. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.